Alright folks, so we have a scooter tire here that is leaking pretty good. You can hear that. Not sure where the leak's even coming from anymore. Oh, there we go. So it's coming around the valve stem, but we've actually punctured the tire right here. So we've got a nice large puncture here that, as you can see, has caused the tire to fail. So, as you hear, it is leaking down. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and uninstall the valve core. And once we have that out, we're going to take our Armor-Dilloz. We're going to fill this guy up with about 2.5, maybe even 3 ounces here. And you'll notice we're going to go ahead and put this to the top so that when we're filling, the Armor-Dilloz can run in and have a place free to go. Little squirts where we release it, that keeps it from puking out. So, alright, let's see. Just a touch more in there. There we go. Now we're going to reinstall the valve core. Make sure we get that cleaned out, get that in there. Alright. Let's repressurize this tire. Now, first off, we're going to find the puncture that we put into it. And we're going to place that downward. Make sure we get some sealant to it. We're going to bring our trusty hand pump up here. And let's lock this guy onto this core. Be careful when you're doing this, especially the flat tire, to not stress the valve and the tube inside. You can tear the thing pretty easily doing that. So I'm going to filter this guy up to 50 psi. Not hearing any leaking here, which is actually great. I was thinking we might get a little bit of leakage until we actually get it over to the puncture, but no, it seems like, there we go. So got it at 6 psi. Oh, listen there. Hear that? A little bit of leakage. All right, so see we got a little bit of blue coming out there. Get that sealant there, and look at that. Instant stop. So, okay. Proof's in the pudding. We got one sealed hole there. However, I think we're going to do a little more to this. So we saw that that was enough to make this tire fail without any sealant in it. However, let's have a go at this thing. Let's see what it can really handle. So we're going to lock on this guy here so you can watch pressure. Hopefully we can lock it on there without losing too much. Alright, so we kept it a little low there. We're only at 40 psi. I'm going to go ahead and pressure this guy back up, knowing I'm going to lose 10 psi putting this valve on there. So, give it just a little bit more pressure this time. Going to bring it up to something like 60. Maybe 65 psi. Alright, so we're down to 20 psi right now, but that's all leakage out of the valve, not leakage out of any sort of a puncture. There we go. We're at 70 psi. Now, you can hear that leak started to leak again. So, a little bit of leakage again. Instant stop, okay? So, as we get this driven into there, as we go to these higher pressures, once in a while it may break free, but again, as soon as we get that plug sealed in there, you're going to see that it's completely stopped leaking. So, let's put this valve measurement tool back on here. Hopefully we don't lose much pressure this time. Just stop leaking around this guy now. Don't want to lose any air out of the tester. Okay. So we now have a pressure gauge installed on the tire. I'm going to turn this to where you can see it. And we're going to go ahead and quickly take, now real quickly, let's just take a look here. We've got that set at just a bit over 50 psi. It looks like about 53 psi right now. So we're going to do a little testing, and we're going to take this guy. This is that same hole that caused a flat earlier. See a flat there. We're going to cause a new one right here. All right, so pretty sharp little pointy object, and there's our pressure gauge. So you'll see we haven't lost any pressure, but let's see what happens when we pull it out. Hey, we still didn't lose any pressure. So lost a little sealant, okay? But you'll see instant sealing and without any pressure loss. This is representative of about a 16 penny nail, so it's a pretty good sized little tool. However, let's use an actual nail. So let's see if we can get this guy to go in here. This might be a little bit of a challenge. May actually have to take and put it right here. We're going to use this guy to pressure this in backwards here. Very difficult to get in there. May not even be able to get it in. You know, let's try a screwdriver instead. Oh, it's so hard to get things to go inside of these tires. Let's try it. Can't really get it to go in. Well, so, given that I'm weak, let's just go ahead and give it a few more punctures here with this guy. And look at that. Another puncture. Sealant goes to it, and we're instantly sealed. So, very, very low pressure on this guy. We're now down to 45 psi. And we have a little leak right here still. Bring some sealant to that. Seems to me that we need a little more sealant in here. See how it's starting to keep leaking? So, that seems to me like we're going to need to add just a little bit more sealant. It's a good sign. One moment here while I go grab a paper towel to clean up. Alright, so I'm going to clean up all this spray around here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in just a touch more sealant to this tire. So, out this tool here. Anytime you get a few punctures and you see it starting to continue leaking sealant and continue leaking air, it's a pretty good sign. See what happened there? We left it down at the bottom, puked right out. Instead, we're going to bring it up here at the top, let it burp a little bit. Now, no leaking. See how cool that was? Alright. Put this guy back together. Going to repressure it, and we're going to go ahead and test again. Now that we have a bit more sealant to flow around inside of there. Unfortunately, with such small tires, even a bit of sealant loss or even a bit of air loss can be pretty significant. So it's important that this goes quickly. Alright. Now pressure this guy back up to a relatively high pressure, which is 4 here, so it's easier. Alright. Now we have this guy back up to 65 psi, and you'll notice everything has stopped leaking again. So, one of the biggest keys that we have to make clear here is the sufficient amount of sealant is very important. And in just 2 tires, we've used about 8 ounces of this sealant. So, real quickly, we're going to go ahead and screw this guy back on there. Hopefully we can get it on there quickly enough to keep it from being a problem. Something just occurred there. Did the valve cord just seal in the reverse direction? Wouldn't that be quite funny? Oh, no, just a whole lot of pressure there. I'm going to go ahead and give that one more pump of pressure here, just make sure we keep it very high. I think I'll be using a few more than one pump here. There we go, 70 psi again. I'll work this guy back on there this time. Make sure we have no air leaks out of this. All right, so we're back to at least 45 psi, I guess. So now that we have more sealant in there, we can again demonstrate that now that we have some extra sealant, get that guy's stuff back in there and watch this gauge. You ready? That's right, absolutely no leakage. So, instant sealing. See that right there? Instant. And we've seen like there's just a tiny little bit of bubble. So the way that this works is that as it loses pressure, it will force sealant out through any puncture like this. And as it does that, it will lose a little pressure, but it also builds a web of fibers and a web of rubber material that will plug the puncture and keep it from continuing to leak eventually. So sometimes it takes a couple of pressure rounds before it'll stop leaking fully, but as you go at it, it will eventually stop leaking. You can see it still has a bit of minor bubblage. Now, we're only at 45 psi, so, and again, we want to look at this. This is right below the valve stem. And I want you to see that it's just barely bubbling. Can you see that there? I think you can. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and again, we're going to go ahead and take this off. We're going to repressurize the tire up to a little bit higher of a pressure to seat those plugs in there. We're at 70 psi, and we're going to look at that one right there by the valve core again. Look at that. No leakage now. And I'm going to leave this sitting here right now, and we're going to go ahead and attach this guy on there so that we can see what we're doing. Really wish I could get this thing on there faster. Less air loss. See how we did there. Oh, look at that. We're now maxed. We're over 60 psi. So that's a really high pressure here. I'm gonna be right back with a little bit of soap water. You can watch this and see if it leaks down. I'll be right back, folks. A little bit of a cleanup here. Get rid of all of our tools. Okay, so look at that, we're still at over 60 psi. We can leave this here for a while so that you can see that it doesn't leak down, but at the end of the day, I think it's pretty obvious. Again, I'm going to be right back with some soap and water so you can see nothing's leaking. So real quickly here, we have a nice batch of soapy water, and we're going to take a look at some of these punctures. Now, we see one right here. We're going to go ahead and look at that, no leaks there. Let's see here. There's another puncture right there. You can see where it's been leaking a little sealant. Do you have any bubbles forming there? No, we do not. All right, what about this little puncture? No, no bubbles. All right, well, let's just look around here. Do we have any other bubbles? Let's see, another puncture right here. Clearly have a puncture right there, we did. Yep, looks like they're all sealed up. Not a single leak going on here. And just in case if anybody's curious, we're gonna go ahead and pressure down on this guy. And yeah, there's nothing leaking out here, guys. Not even at an extremely high pressure. So let's have a little bit more fun and puncture it again, shall we? So just one more look at how well this works. So we're just gonna take this guy and we're just gonna, let's see, make sure we got a fresh piece of tire here. And just, there we go. Stabbed right in. Now, we're going to take this guy and we're going to make sure you can see that pressure gauge. Now watch how much of this comes out. You ready? Pressure and sealant. Sealed. We didn't lose any pressure. And in case there's a question on whether or not that's leaking, let's go ahead and make sure we get a whole lot of bubbly stuff there. Yep, no leaks, guys. And dry that off here. So I think this is actually a really good example of what we actually should get here. See how we have a little bit of fiber sticking out of here? We're going to bring that up so you can really see it. But see these fibers? Those fibers are the long Kevlar fibers that we use in our product. You can see how they've formed a net and they've brought themselves outside of the tire. And inside of this, if you were to look closely inside the tire, what you'll see is there's a net made out of this material that's packed full of rubber particles, which are keeping the tire from leaking further. And again, I just want to point out, we're still over 60 psi, no problem. And in fact, let's go ahead and let a little bit of that air out. Here, let's work on getting that pressure down to something where we can see that this gauge isn't changing, and I don't just have it horribly overpressured. So let's see if I can actually get it to leak some air here. There we go. Is it leaking yet? There we go. Now, seal it. And I think I lost more pressure than I intended to, but we're down at, what is that? 45 psi. That'll do nicely. Look at that big old goopy leak. Look at that. And you can see again, it is leaking. So what we have to do when we see a leak like this, there we go. Excellent. Gonna put it down at the bottom and make sure we get those fibers to it. Now you see, we'll see some of these fibers starting to come out now. We still see a little bit more blue goo, right? So get some more sealant down to there. And what we may have to do is pressure this up, okay? So one of the things that is required oftentimes is that we actually do have to repressurize the tire and get it worked in there a little bit to get that seal to actually take hold. So let's see here. Is it still leaking? I think it is a little bit. We're probably gonna have to repressurize this. Or has it stopped? Nope, looks like it stopped. So even right there, which was a little bit of a challenge to get it to stop because of the lower pressure in the tire, looks like we've got it to stop again. So even at the lower pressures. And now what I'll do is I'll set this guy here, clean up this mess. Tire sealant everywhere. And you can see this gauge. Where I'm just going to go ahead and walk away for 5 minutes. I wish I had a clock for you to watch here, but clearly there's no clock in hand. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just walk away for a couple of minutes. And you can watch the pressure here and see if it changes. Obviously we've laid the tire on its side, so this should allow the sealant to run down away from any of the punctures, and we'll see if it starts leaking. So I'll be back here in a couple of minutes. Right now, this video is about 21 minutes long. We're going to go ahead and let that run until it's about, let's go ahead and let it run to 26, 27 minutes, and we'll come back and check the pressure, see where it is, and go from there. And we'll just set that right there. So real quickly, I borrowed a snow globe here that we can use to make sure I'm not cheating on time. So let's make sure that we get all of this stuff really nicely spun up in there. And there we go, good as a clock, right? Turn that around just like that. So, this has been a fairly long-winded video. However, I think it should be clear to most observers at this point that we definitely can do what we say we do. So, as you see here, this tire's had quite a few punctures in it now. Still holding pressure just fine. This is an inner tube type tire, so this is not a tubeless, which are much easier to deal with. So while we'll rate this easily to over a 1/4 inch in a tubeless, unfortunately I can't get anything that large into this tire, so we're having a little difficulty testing it right here on camera. But needless to say, a 16 penny nail, sized awl, which is what we're using here to puncture it, clearly allows you to get a pretty fast seal, and as you see, we've not continued to lose PSI or have any leaks afterwards, so even fairly serious punctures are really not a problem to deal with. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and call this, pull this down, and at some point in the future expect us to do a little bit more proper of a video. We're going to get the video production crew in here, and we're going to go ahead and really have a go at these tires with a clock and all of the proper stuff, so you can see this a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster. We're going to try to make it more like a 10-minute video rather than a 30-minute video. So in any case, thanks for your time today, guys, and I hope that this has been educational and helpful for you guys to see both how Armor-Dilloz works and some of the challenges that may arise when using it, installing it, as well as whenever you're trying to seal a puncture that has occurred, some of the things you may need to do in order to get the sealant to work as promised. Again, folks, it's not magic, it's just science, but pretty good science. Thanks again. You guys have a great day and have fun riding. Stay safe.